How's it going? Today we are going to talk about how to clear up cloudy water in your aquarium, in your tank. But before that, I'm gonna flip to a clip of this tank when it was green and cloudy. Algae, as you know, is more greenish. We're not sure what this is. I mean, it's cloudy. It's hard to tell if it's green or not. But the thing is, it's been here for a few weeks now. Say 2 or 3 months. The way I was able to clear up this cloudy, murky tank was simply to remove the light on top and to use a UV filter light. No, whoa, before you start going into the comments and typing some nasty things to me, hear me out for a second. That is what I did to clear up my tank. Now, I started from the very end of the trip, and now I gotta take you on the journey of how I got there. So hold on. So if you were to Google how to fix cloudy aquarium water, chances are that a lot of the times you'll see people say, just don't do anything, it's bacterial bloom, it's a new tank, just don't do anything, let the filter do its thing. Now that does apply to new tanks where the filter hasn't been established. So your number one task is to find out, A, is this a bacterial bloom in a new tank cycle? Or B, is it an algae bloom? If it is a new tank, your filter's not established, then yeah, probably the solution is to not do anything, let the bacterial bloom do its thing, and then let it clear all the bad bacteria or all the algae out. But if it is an algae bloom, and the only way to know if it's algae is if it has a greenish appearance, like the water parameters are gonna be fine, the only way to know is if it's green. So if it has any slight of green, most likely it's an algae bloom, and most likely you're gonna have to do something other than just wait and let it sit there. Now, that's just my experience. I'm not an expert. That's just what worked for me. And so there you have it. The solution, I think, to clear up algae bloom is to turn off the light, kill the light source, and use a UV filtering light. Again, I took you to the very top of the summit. We're looking at the view now, hindsight 2020. I gotta take you through the journey. This journey has 7 steps or 7 checkpoints, if you will. I'm going to just read it off my phone because none of these actually worked until step number 7. So the first thing I did was I got C-chem stability because the thought there was I'm gonna introduce good bacteria, and the good bacteria is supposed to kill this bad bacteria or this algae or whatever. So I got stability, I got ADA Bacter 100, and I got ceramic rings. So I got all that stuff. The theory there was, hey, I want to establish my good bacteria in my filter. I'm going to help this ecosystem as much as I can. And then once all the good bacteria is, alive, fighting, kicking algae's butt, then the green would clear up. Now, that didn't work. Actually, all these steps until the last step did not work. So I'm going to try my hardest not to keep saying that. The second thing I did was give the ecosystem less light. I went from 8 hours a day to 6 hours a day, thinking that the less light the algae has, then the more opportunity the good bacteria has to bloom. That was a step in the right direction, although it was not enough. The third thing I did was I did more water changes. There was a point in time when I was doing a water change every single day, about a fifth to a third of the tank every single day. And I kept doing that because after the first water change, it did clear up a little bit. And the reason for that is because the old water had the algae in it. And when I put the new water in, it appeared to have cleared up a little bit more. So I was like, I'm gonna just help this along as much as possible. But that is indeed a mistake, because every time you introduce new water, that introduces new nutrients for the algae to consume, and it gives them supposedly a better chance of surviving than the beneficial bacteria. The fourth thing I did was I upgraded the filtering capacity. At this point, I was almost going crazy, ripping my hair out, and I looked at that filter, and it's actually a 20-gallon maximum filter. So I was doing a 1-for-1. This tank is, I think, about 17 gallons. So basically, I was reaching the capacity of what this filter could handle. And the thought was okay, I need more circulation in this thing, so I'm gonna get a bigger filter. I ended up getting the Fluval 50-gallon capacity filter, so I filled that thing up with ceramic rings and all the media and all of that. And I had 2 filters running here at one point, and I ran that for a few days. It was still green. After getting the 50-gallon capacity hang-on back filter, AquaClear, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna beef this thing up. Eventually, I'm gonna get a nicer tank, a rimless tank, and so I'm gonna get the best filter, or one of the best filters there is out there. So I went to a Fluval 407 canister filter, which is running this tank right here, and I ran that for a few days. It also didn't work. By this time, I was getting pretty frustrated because I've spent $300-ish at this point, and I was like, okay, what the heck? And so the sixth thing I did was I got a water polisher, the fine mesh thing, put it in the filter, ran it for a few days, still didn't work, was going crazy. The next thing I did, I went to my local fish store. I saw that they were using a UV filtered light, and I was like, okay, well, why didn't I think of this before? People have mentioned it in forums. So I went on Amazon, got a little cheap UV filter, I think it was like 25 bucks, threw that in here. It's actually on, you might be able to see it. You're not supposed to look into it directly, but there it is. And I was like, this is great. That's gonna kill all the algae, and the beneficial bacteria is gonna be able to thrive in there. Ran the UV light for another few days, still didn't work. At this point, I had given up all hope. I basically re-upped all my equipment, got everything, spent all the money, and it still didn't work. So I was like, you know what, this tank is FUBAR. I'm gonna start a new one. I did all that, transferred everything, transferred the light, transferred the heater, transferred everything. Put these fish in a little hospital tank, and I was about to just get rid of this tank. The only reason why I kept it is because I knew it was established, like the parameters were good, although it was green, and in the case of emergency or whatever, I needed a place to house these fish, I would have something. So that's what I did. Everything got transferred out, lights, heater, everything. Lo and behold, the next day, this cleared up a little bit, and I was like, nah, like my eyes are playing tricks on me. The next day, cleared up even more, and it was like, third day, this was like pretty clear. What you're seeing is about a week later. So all along, the solution was pretty simple. Just kill the lights and use a UV filter. Now that worked for me, and it might not work for you. I'm gonna give you 3 disclaimers here because this is more complicated than it looks. In fact, I don't know everything. This just happened to work for me. But here are 3 things that you should know with this solution. First is that I was feeding my fish twice a week. So overfeeding is a common problem. Basically, that was not my problem. If you're feeding your fish every single day, that might be too much. You're giving it nutrients. You're giving the ecosystem too much nutrients. It's giving the algae food that it needs to thrive, so maybe cut back on the feeding. Second thing is I did not use any product. I'm sorry, I lied. I did use Algae Fix. That was like almost like a last ditch thing. I had it in my laundry room, and I read a bunch of things that, chemicals are bad and whatever. That was like a desperation thing. If I were to do it again, I wouldn't even touch that. In fact, I should just get rid of that bottle. And the third thing is that there are a ton of different types of algae, so I'm not even sure what type that was. I just know it wasn't like the hairy kind, and I know it wasn't black. Basically my water is green, and that depends on, the different nutrient types, and I do have a albino pleco right there, so maybe he's doing a great job. I don't know. You should know that it was, I think, the common green algae, not the blue-green one. There's a lot, again, I oversimplified this, but it was the algae where it's just in the water, it's not sticking to anything else. The hardest part about all of this for me was to identify, is this a new tank syndrome? Is it bacterial bloom, normal cycling process? Because that's what I kept reading in the forums, that's what the local fish store said. I don't know. So out of doubt, out of caution, I just left it. I left it for 6 to 8 weeks. It still was not clearing up. So I was like, okay, it's probably not new tank syndrome. I don't know. It was 50-50 at that point, but it did have a slight tint of green. So that's my takeaway. If you've been waiting for 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and it's got the slightest tint of green, it's probably an algae thing. Or that's what it was for me. So consider killing the lights and getting a UV filter. I mean, try it for 3 days. If it's clearing up, then that's probably what it is. But if you're under that 6 to 8 week kind of time cycle period thing, it's a new tank, then probably it's gonna be a bacterial bloom, especially if it does not have a green tint. It's hard to tell over phone on what people post online because different phones have different color filters and all of that, but. So there are all the fishies in the freaking clear tank. Those are golden white clouds, I think is what they're called. There is the albino guy. There's no filter in there. There's no light in there. It's very sad, but it's clear. And this is the new tank. I'll talk more about that. If you want to stay tuned about that, consider subscribing, but that's where the light ended up. And there's the 407 there. But yeah, more adventures to come on this one. This one's cleared up, but now we're gonna get rid of it because it has a rim. This guy does not. So thank you for watching. Hope that was helpful. If you want more content around aquascaping, fish keeping, etc., consider subscribing.